Grabbed a room. Was on site with a client here in LA. It's actually warm in here, so I'm gonna take my sweater off. Plus, I got to represent with the logos. You know what I'm saying? Got to do this.
So you're from a company called, I'm guessing it's Predictable Revenue.
Yeah, we have Carb.io as well, but today I got Predictable Revenue on.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, well, I want to talk about a few of these things.
They actually have the only soda I tend to like, which I have once in a while, Sunkist. Like maybe as a kid, I liked the orange ones. I don't know, but orange Sunkist are sort of like that and ginger beer, or maybe sometimes grape soda. But I don't drink a lot of soda. Once in a while, once a month.
Yeah, I think for me, root beer. Root beer is the one that I dig.
Solid choice. I used to go to A&W as a kid. So I forgot to mention, I'm actually going to be in New York. I don't know if I'd have time to do anything, but I'm in New York on Tuesday.
Okay.
Doing a client on site during the day, and then do a keynote and a dinner at Savo. A Savo dinner that Tuesday night.
Next week?
Yeah. I can get the invite and see if you want to come by. But
I'll try and stop by, actually.
Rarely there because it's on the opposite coast.
I know.
I'm actually this is LAX out the window right now.
All right.
So, it's pretty cool. Like this is a client. They're right here at the airport. It's pretty cool watching airplanes go back and forth.
Oh, sweet. I would show you our office here, but it's phone booths.
Yeah.
And then I have a view of the building right across.
Yeah.
But
that's right. This is
wait, so are you based out? Where are you based out of, actually?
Well, I live like West Side Los Angeles.
Okay.
So LA. We have to move in a few weeks. We don't know the houses around here. We're not going to move cities yet. Although at some point we'd probably like to, or we will move out of the LA area. If you want to find, because we have so many kids, we have 12 kids. We find I don't want to say a farm, but someplace where we have more outdoor land that can be in the dirt, but within reach of a city. And we don't know where that would be. So I don't know.
Yeah, but tough. And you think you definitely stay in California? Is that the idea?
Right now, someday not necessarily. Right now, we're just looking in LA because if kids and there's like 6 kids across 5 schools here, West Side LA. There's our friends, nannies, all our support system. So we're looking for this move. We're looking here, but we've always the last few years we had to move every year or two. We stayed in one place for 2 years because the family's been growing so fast. All right. 0 to 12 kids in 5 years. So we just have to keep moving. And it's interesting. It just comes in budgets and things. We looked at some 5-bedroom houses, but we wouldn't fit.
Yeah, 5 bedrooms.
7 bedrooms is like the minimum.
People. Yeah,
that's like 7. And it's how do you find? There's really not that many 7-bedroom houses. Period. It's interesting, like triangulation, moving this way.
Yeah, I think added logistical challenges. Myself, I was living in Brooklyn for a lot of years, and then had one child, my son, then 2 daughters. It just became very crowded. So out there in the Jersey Shore, it's nice. About an hour away from the city, but at least have a lot more space.
Yeah. Yep.
So
get there. So what do you want to talk about today, Mr. Birch? Sales, life.
I think maybe sales, soda. Okay, it's always a good topic. I was in Atlanta recently, so that was interesting. But
the big chicken.
Grape shake. See, here's the challenge. When I end up traveling, I'm in hotel, office, airport, back home.
Yep.
And so literally my Atlanta experience was I flew in the morning, sat in the hotel room, did work, 5:30 there was reception, after our party, next day conference, party at night, next day more conference, and then headed out to the airport around 1 p.m. So
I get that.
Just in and out.
Yeah. The only time I do
yeah.
any kind of sightseeing is if I bring a kid along on a trip, which sometimes usually I haven't for the last year or two. I went on a 4-day trip to Canada last week because of our software company, the Carb.io group, is in Vancouver. We did some stuff there, and then Almsites in Kelowna, and I ended up bringing an 11-year-old son. But I warned him it would not be a fun trip. It was a very intense trip, but just he ended up coming in. So I highly recommend anyone who's listening, if you have kids, at some point take them on a trip with you.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide that, with my son, because he's 10. And
yeah, that's a great age.
I now have like a regular regular program, because now I have the enterprise sales meetup. It's not only in New York, but also in Boston, Philadelphia, DC, and they're all once a month. So I rotate to all those different locations. Now, when we launch Denver, Chicago, and San Francisco, that's going to be a little bit different, because I'm going to have folks on the ground doing those, managing those groups. But yeah, like Boston's always a good trip. Mm-hmm. Like to me, like New York to Boston, that's a good one.
But yeah, he's an age. I mean, I think like 8, even 7, like 7 and 8 and 9 for sure is a sweet spot when they can come along, and they don't care what you're doing. They just get to spend some time with you, and it's good. Highly recommend it. I'm going to do more of it. I mean, it's just we've been so crazy. And the last person said I'm crazy busy, but last year or so, because last year we're going from 5 to 12 kids. Whole nother, probably it's a future book. I don't know. But yeah, so having just traveling, hasn't worked out that way.
Yeah, I guess kind of like the maybe the opposite of impossible to inevitable, from 0 kids to 12 kids. Because that does seem like manageable to holy crap.
Insane. Yeah. Well, people always ask, how do I do it? And I'm like, I don't really know. I honestly, it's just step by step. But it gets, like anything else, you get used to it. It's awesome. Some days it's rough or my head's exploding. Some days it's just amazing. Like anything, or at least entrepreneurship. Some days you want to shoot yourself, and some days you're like, yeah, king of the world. Ups and downs.
Yeah, so
in fact, the very last bit in the new book, in the From Impossible to Inevitable book, the title of that section, because I've gotten this question on different times, and the title of it, I just took someone's. It was like, hey Aaron, how in the hell do you juggle work plus having 12 kids? That's the title of the last section in the new book, because that's the question I get from people. And I'm not sure, but I put bunch of notes in there about it.
So yeah, because I thought the book was really interesting, because you start off with, it's kind of like soup to nuts. So you're talking about how to figure out what your market is, and you're building up to that. And then the end, like the last 2 chapters, are really about the whole dynamic of the employer, the founders, the employees, and trying to build that culture and do it in a way that I suppose it just comes down to transparency.
Yeah, culture and motivation. Well, so then Predictable Revenue was a sales book, and it was meant to be a sales book for VPs of sales, sales managers, and salespeople. The new book, From Impossible to Inevitable, is a growth book, which is meant for basically every single person in a B2B company.
Right.
So they're very different books. And in fact, one of the best compliments I think we've gotten from someone on Amazon, I think it was an Amazon review, said that they follow myself, they've read Predictable Revenue, they follow Jason Lemkin, but the new book blew them away. And that's why it's sort of like that product market fit and lead generation and sales scalability and things like the entrepreneur's journey and motivation, like some of these things that people need to hit on to really, like, what does it take to ramp up your growth? It's usually not just one thing. It's rarely just one thing. And no matter whatever you fix today, like there's never like one secret thing. And whoever tells you that is either fooling themselves or selling you something. So we have 7 things in the book. Yeah. One secret.
Well, it's the listicles, right? It's like one secret, the 5 things you need for SaaS success, but yeah, I think to one of the points of the chapter, it's like success does not come immediately. It's like that 24-month or sometimes even longer slog.
That's to get off the ground.
Just to get off the ground, right? And that doesn't even talk about how to actually even get beyond, okay, now we feel like we have something. To the point, like chapter 1, find a niche.
Yep. So I will say,
And
so the new book, yeah, no, we're getting great reviews, but the new book has 7, this is the 7 steps to success, right?
Yeah.
But there's 7 parts, and each one has a painful truth. And the one you hit on, part 5 is called Do the Time.
Yep.
So the journey. And the painful truth for that part is it's going to take years longer than you want.
Yeah.
Whatever that big goal is, and let's call it a business goal, but oftentimes it's career goals as well. It's going to take years longer than you want. And what I found is whenever I share that with people who've been around the block and started companies before, they're like, oh, yep. And newer entrepreneurs are like, what are you talking about? I got this. I got a 6-month plan to exit.
So it's a whole like growth mentality. Like, we're going to get all growth and just
but it's a growth
get viral, right? Like, so there's that time when everything was viral.
Yeah, our app is going to like take off by word of mouth. It's going to crush it. There'll be millions of people who use it, and then 5% are going to buy it, and we'll just watch the money roll in. It'll be an overnight success.
Yeah, of course. It's
Dropbox did it.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Facebook did it. What's the big deal?
Well, it's funny because people talk about these examples like Slack. Oh, well, they just kind of built it and people came.
We'll just do what Slack did. We're going to copy what Slack did.
Yeah. And I think I could count on maybe one hand the number of companies that actually had that type of incredible growth. And even when you go behind those stories, it's interesting to hear that it actually took a long time to get to that point where they just started to take off.
Yeah. Okay. So Mark, how long did Slack take to get to that point? Do you know?
Please do share. I do know like a little bit of story, but it took a while.
All right. Take a guess.
So 3 years, 4?
3 years? More. I think it was 5 for that entity.
Right.
So now this is something where Stuart, he'd already been successful.
Right.
And so again, if you're a newer entrepreneur trying to do what Slack did, Stuart was successful first with Flickr, and then it took him I think it was like 5 years for this other company that like pivoted and before they did this. So you could call it 5 years. Now the marketing story is made because it's a better story in the press to say you go from 0 to $1 billion in 9 months.
Right.
And by leaving out the 5 year, 5 or 6, whatever the 4 or 5 or 6 years before then, just makes for a better story. But again, it's either like at least 5 years and maybe like 12 years, depending on how you define. It's like first level 6. It was like Slack was like a second level because he had 1 level, then he got to the second level.
Yep.
So it takes way longer than people realize and than you want. Like if you want to be a real VP of sales and you're sort of new into sales world, to be a real VP of sales, it does take, it's called like probably 5 to 7 years of experience and actually doing it to get to not just having a title, but to being a capable head of sales, where you actually know what you're doing. You're not just, it's not just title inflation.
Right. And I think I see a lot of that, particularly because the SaaS world, even though it's been around for a while, there's been waves, right? Now we're kind of in the second wave, or even maybe third wave, depending on who you talk to. And there's a lot of these companies, they're growing fast, and they're getting more and more talent in the door. And they have people who are leading sales or customer success or different organizations. And these folks don't have a ton of management or typical leadership experience going into these roles. And a lot of times, particularly here in New York City, a lot of these folks who are coming together, scratching their heads, saying like, "How do I do this? What do I do?"
Yep. So, and here's a couple of things. Like, so going back to the book, is the number one thing that people need to know. Like, whoever's listening to this, for example, whether it's for you personally, or whether it's for you at your company, the first chapter of the new book is called "Nail a Niche." Right, and the painful truth. This is number 1, right? There's 7 parts and 7 painful truths, and this one is, you are not ready to grow. The reason you're struggling to grow and you feel like other people are nailing it and you're not, and you're struggling. The reason you're not growing faster is because you're not ready to grow. You have to be in a different place in order to be able to grow faster. And you can't grow faster. You can't speed up your growth until you nail your niche. And whether you're a company or whether you're a person for your career. And, it goes into a lot of detail into how to do that and why does this and so on. But I see like almost every, at least, I don't know, I'm just going to pick, let's call it 80% of companies, maybe that many people, vast majority of companies, like that is the place that they need to focus on, which is the company itself and the way it works or the market. It's not going to be able to, trying to grow it faster would be a slog. So in order to grow fast, how do you rethink what does it take to be able to grow in the first place? So when you do things like spend money on sales and marketing, it actually works. So again, but if you're spending money on lead generation or marketing sales, you feel like you're really not getting much out of it, you probably haven't nailed your niche.
Right. I think what happens. This typically happens with a lot of companies I've worked with over the years. It's they get like a small number of customers, and they'll be stuck between 1 and 10 customers, and it'll just keep on going over and over and over again. It's they're banging their heads against the wall, like, hey, why isn't this working? We have like these great, this core group of customers, and we think we have a product. Why can't we get beyond that?
Yep. Well, I think part of that is the time, because people don't realize, they think 9 months or 6 months or 12 months, but it is usually 2 to 3 years if you're in B2B. Right. So that's part of it. I mean, look, we at carb.io, which is our software company, and it's an outbound prospecting platform. And it's been under development, I want to say for like a year and a half-ish. And it was based, so that we do outsourced prospecting.
Right.
And then we started to automate that, build technology around it. And, this is the only platform that's really designed with the predictable revenue approach. So it's not about, there's lots of apps that send email. It's not about sending email. But it's not like we haven't nailed our niche yet. We know there's things that we still need to build. We know what we need to do, but we still just takes time to like build it and get it right. All the like the little details with the interface. I mean, there's like there's a crap load of these little details and gotchas that you just, the only way you can work through them is by working through them. And then, so again, it's probably at least maybe 6 months away until it's like so tight that we're even ready to really grow with the software part. So the company has been growing with outsourcing, and we have something called Predictable University. But the software itself it just takes longer than you think it should or want it to.
Well, how's that process actually? Because this is a really interesting, maybe jumping off point and talking about some of the other parts of the new book. Mm-hmm. But you've been trying to build up carb.io, and you're trying to figure out, okay, well, what is that niche? Like, who are you working with? Who are you talking to kind of figure out, well, what does the product need to do? What problems is it trying to solve? And going beyond just the core group of customers or prospects you're working with, how to maybe get beyond that and start to build up a little bit more credibility.
Yep. Well, one of the parts of this first chapter of the new book, it says, you haven't nailed your niche until you've signed up 10 unaffiliated customers. Right. It means they didn't know you, they're friends of friends, they're just like, cold. Right. They're purely buying on the merits of the product, not your brand, not your relationships. Mm-hmm. That's one part. And one of the ways that you get to that point of getting the product and the messaging that tight is first you got to just put the time in. Again, it's call it like a couple, whatever it is, whether 2 years or 3 years, or some people it's even longer. It could be 5 or 10 years. Right. Part of that depends on if you're doing, I don't know, but you put the time in and just keep improving it. And part of it is, even there, people don't do enough outside interviews. So Jason's rule has this rule, like Jason Lemkin, co-author, do at least the 20 interview rule, where at different points you're just making sure you get out from behind your computer and your desk and your whiteboard, and you're out like talking to people regularly, like whether they're current customers or prospects or people who don't know you. Beginning is the use cases and then refining it. And it's not just your customers making sure they're happy. Because sometimes in the early days, those first 10 customers, you get a bunch of customers who aren't going to be a fit for your future. Like you might get 10 customers and you realize, wow, 5 of them aren't a good fit. and 5 of them are. So we're only going to refocus, like we're learning where we're really going to be the best fit and focus there. And like, for example, with us, with our software product, you know, I might know the most of anybody almost in the world around like prospecting across in tech and, you know, big companies and small companies. And, you know, my belief is, like I said in the book, you know, we start with small companies. We've been starting with smaller companies, you know, up to a few million in revenue. And there's some bigger ones using it, but you start small, you get something working. I think for us, like our niche will probably be medium and larger companies. But again, it's all theory till we get there. And I do believe in, for example, like my experience, I believe like our core value proposition, like why people will use us and get the most benefit and how we're different is really not so much on things like sending email, not so much things on, but our automating stuff. It's really sort of handling responses and then workflow. You know, a lot of it is you as a founder, you've got hypotheses, you've got theories, and you build something, you test it, and you test, and that's why it can take 2 or 3 years, because that's how long it takes to sort of build and test to not only get the product the way you want it, but get the fit. Also, to make sure, can you charge what you need to charge for it? You know, so there's the product,
was it
there's
delivering
the pricing,
value?
Everything. And you can have a great product, but if people aren't getting value from it, or
Exactly.
you know, just in terms of usage, or if they don't see, you know, value for the price. So there's a lot of complexity. You know, an example is, you know, we've looked at sort of instead of charging $100 a month per user, we're charging $1,000 a month per user. You know, it's a super high price, but we're looking at justifying it in other ways because, you know, we're just taking a different position than other people. So we'll see what happens, but I think that's why it can take 2 or 3 years. And it's way more complicated than people expect if you haven't done it before, especially in software.
Yeah, especially in software. I'm going to take a little bit of a tangent because talking about automation, the channels, right? So the whole sales development movement is really just taken off. Yeah, so let's say we're maybe 5-6 years into really having that be a huge movement. And so now you have conferences around sales development. There's a lot of associations and all this stuff. But it seems as if there's almost a backlash that's happening because a lot of the technologies and processes and things that have been talked about have been automated. And so we are really efficient, but we're not as effective. And I thought what was interesting was watching one of the videos about doing personalized outreach versus mass. And it might be an interesting balance there, but it seems like people just want to take an approach and go whole hog and do a whole bunch of, say, automated like 1,000 email blasts a day without necessarily thinking about the outcomes. And so I think we're kind of gone in the sales world. We've gone to the point where we understand that it's good to have this idea of specialization. We should have a team that just prospects and handles inbound and handles outbound.
Yep, it's still the exception, but I think it's you know,
it's growing.
Yeah.
But in that section itself, in prospecting, you know, people have gone a little bit maybe far afield with automation, not really have given a lot of thought in terms of what they're trying to achieve. Yeah,
I mean, what I find this happened with Salesforce. It happens with pretty much everything. Is people see these tools, these cool tools, and they're like, how can we automate this? How can we use this tool? We got to do this, do that. And they end up usually like automating a bad process. So they just get more of what's not working. It makes it worse. So I've always been a big fan of you do something like really simple and manually with like a whiteboard or Excel sheet. You sort of get it working, and then you try to streamline or automate it. And, you know, so, you know, as much as at least as many of the times automation helps, there's an equivalent number of times where it hurts. It's distracting. It doesn't work. You're always fixing things. It's just causing problems. And I feel like in a lot of the clients we work with, so, you know, so I still do consulting with companies to help them sort of figure out everything with an outbound prospecting program, of which software could be a part of it, but it's also comp and hiring and people. And again, I've usually found that we want to wait on a lot of the technologies because they just confuse people unnecessarily versus trying to get the process right, even if it's slower. But make sure it's working before you try to speed it up and automate it. And for example, a lot of times, and I don't know if was it the red response rate red herring video? Does that ring a bell? Is that the one you saw? Or anyway, but
yeah, you're just whiteboarding some stuff out, and I thought it was interesting. You have like 2 columns, and you had like the personalized approach where you did maybe 25 emails, and you got 25%. Oh no, it was like 4 emails, 25% response. You had you get 1 response, and you spend an hour on it versus doing 100 emails.
Yeah, that was the it's this response rate throughput. Now that itself isn't the video, but there's links to the other 2. So I did these 3 short videos. They're all about 3 minutes. It's part of launching Predictable University. One of them, I was mentioning, it's video. So where I see everyone getting confused. There's so much like noise in the market around, especially outbound prospecting and sales development reps. And almost all the blogs you'll read around cold emailing are mass emails or waste of time. They're generic. You need to personalize everything, right? Or else you're being evil because you're not personalizing everything and respecting their time, and which is totally untrue. Actually, here's the so this last link I just.
Oh, cool.
Oh, here's Daniel Gold. Actually, Daniel Gold, he's someone in our Predictable University class. So,
nice.
I think it's that realization that in any of these roles is that sometimes mass emailing or templates work really well. Sometimes they don't.
Right.
Sometimes personalization works really well. Sometimes it doesn't. You always have to test everything. And part of what you have to factor in is how long do things take. So again, this is, if mass emails, if you get, by the way, the video says if you get a 3% response rate versus a 20, so like a mass email with a 3% response rate versus a custom email with a 25% response rate, like they might not, one is maybe not better than the other, because if one takes you an hour, you need 3 responses, and the other takes an hour and you get 0 responses. So it's like thinking, what do you get as part of investment of time, also compared to response rates, and it's like manufacturing throughput. But I really want people to be able to sort of identify and cut through and then when they read blogs, not just about prospecting. I mean, you remember, like all the news out there and most of the blogs are usually trying to sell you something. They have some kind of agenda. Even whether it's ideas, like I have a very specific agenda. I'm usually trying to sell you on ideas at least.
Right.
Like, here's why you should believe this or think about this. Here's why you should, authenticity, you should care about it. But a lot of people are trying to sell you on. And so there's a natural, competitiveness to embellish everything. So in social media, you see this because everyone's,
everything's dead, right? So cold calling is dead, for example, right?
Yeah, it's not really dead. That was dramatic. That's my own
right?
Dramatic embellishment. It's not dead. It's, it's there, but it can work. It's just,
right.
But yeah.
But it's the whole point of, like, to your point, to what you were saying, it's the embellishment, the kind of over the top elements, and you always got to think about, well, what's the outcome we're trying to achieve? And that's what I liked about your video, because it was pretty simple math. But when you actually look at it on a whiteboard, it's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah,
people don't think about it.
Maybe we should actually, incorporate mass emails. Maybe that does work, right? So, to your point, I'm always thinking about, well, why don't we, instead of just saying we shouldn't do that, like we shouldn't cold call, we shouldn't email, we shouldn't do this or that, or social media is saving the day, like social selling is saving the day, to actually test some of these things, right?
Yeah, I don't personally, for all the, and a lot of my clients end up they're not like this. There's like the super advanced hackers,
mm-hmm.
and they're not necessarily the people that we work with on the consulting side. But social selling, I haven't really had any personal contact. The only social selling I see that really works is usually using LinkedIn to find names and targets. It's like the simple stuff. It's like overhyped by people who sell social selling stuff.
Right.
It's useful, but it's not like some sort of magical unicorn you ride off into the sunset. Be nice, But it's like, there's the Gartner chart, which is there's like the peak of expectations, and then you hit the reality. There's the trough of reality before you get to the plateau of this is, peak of expectations, trough of disappointment, and plateau of reality, or something like that. That's true. It's like that's life, how life works, business works. But the whole lead generation thing is part 2 of the new book. So part 1 is nailing a niche. Like if you don't nail a niche, spending money on marketing and sales is going to be mostly a waste anyway. And then part 2 is about lead generation. Really, parts 2 and 3 are updating predictable revenue, some of those core ideas, and adding in, it's like updating some of my stuff, combining with Jason's stuff.
Yeah. So to that point, I mean, when you first wrote Predictable Revenue, right, no one did that. And you were able to introduce that to the world. And then many years later, now everyone reads Predictable Revenue and they implement a lot of your ideas. And so now it's not necessarily novel. So what's changed? Like, what are the things that you like? Let's say the key things that you identified in the book, in the new book, that you said that have maybe shifted from the original concepts.
Honestly, really, nothing fundamental has changed. First, things have changed. Like there's a lot more apps. Right? There's a million freaking sales and marketing apps and plugins, and a lot of them are related to outbound prospect. I mean, there's a lot of apps that were inspired by Predictable Revenue.
Right.
There's more email. There's always more noise. There's more messaging all around with a social message. Like just the number of stuff each person is bombarded by from all channels is more. So, it just means to some extent to be successful with prospecting, whether it's and Predictable Revenue wasn't just about cold referral emails. It's really just saying, look, if you can make something work and systematize it, that can help you control your growth. That's really the core message there. But even with the referral email approach and some of the techniques that we focus on, it all still works really well. I think one of my lessons I've learned, it's not that it changed, but what I've learned is, again, on the spectrum, there's companies that fall on, sometimes outbound, for example, outbound prospecting will work better for some companies, and like SaaS companies, product companies, just it tends to work better for them. It's more concrete. And for services companies, some types, and in crowded markets, it's harder to make it work. So again, this is all the lessons that went into the new book from Impossible book. And so I think that it's not that anything's changed the last few years even. It's just the new book, for example, there's more lessons learned in terms of what does it take to grow a company in period, or even to make outbound prospecting work. Like, are you a candidate for it? Or are you, on a scale of 1 to 10, are you more like a 3 or more like an 8?
Okay.
So, there's actually a question here by Nick, a good one.
Yeah.
A problem I have with social selling and even personalized emails as much.
Oh. There. All right.
Yeah. Sorry.
No worries.
Died. Okay, so actually, no, this is why I love the question, was because, there's a lot of techniques out there, and this is something I have, it's not a problem with the writers, but it's more with the readers. Could be blogs and posts around here. We have this 75% response rate on emails or approaches or social something. And then when you dig in, it's like, well, they sent 34 messages. Or it's like some limited campaign, and it's not something that you can repeat across a team. And with social selling, and this is for Nick's question, I found it's like there's usually, if you have 10 people, there might be like 1 or 2 people that are inherently like talented at social something. They like writing messages and being authentic, and they just like to do it. And everyone else just, it just doesn't work. They struggle. So it's not very repeatable across a team. It's not very scalable. So it's a hit or miss thing, I find, so far. And there's tons of apps and things out there that may change it, but I'm a bit of a laggard because there's so many apps, there's so many approaches. I tend to see how things filter up through clients and through friends, and before I got too many kids to go out there and try all the apps. I wait till see what happens with clients.
It's been a little bit of a sales technology explosion.
I think that's one reason I still love. Oh, sorry, Mark.
Oh, I was saying it was a little bit of a sales technology explosion I'd say the past 3 years, right? So now you have all these things out there. And what have you seen kind of filtering through your clients, just from a tools perspective?
Very little. In like the everyday companies.
Yeah.
Like Reportive is a great one. And then there's trying to be more companies besides Salesforce in the smaller, like so 1 to 10 users, maybe 1 to 20 users. There's more alternatives to Salesforce.com, like Pipedrive. The thing is, with all the like the companies that are like the sales hackers,
right?
They're using all these complicated workflows and apps. They're relatively rare, and most people are getting by with just the basics. They use like Salesforce or some other CRM. They've got email. They've got their phone. They have some way to get lists and sales. There's like a couple things, but it's a lot more humdrum, a lot more basic than I think you would imagine. They don't, but that's 80% of the market, 90% of the market.
It's funny you mention that because I've been helping out some companies, and they sell to the construction industry, plastics, coatings, manufacturing, right? Outside of this SaaS tech world, which when I step outside of that, it seems like it's a completely different universe, because they look at me like, but even adopting Salesforce, in many cases, too much.
People struggle with that. And now we implement, and the thing is, like, we went from Pipedrive to Salesforce internally here at Predictable Revenue /carb.io. So Predictable Revenue, and I don't remember how many users we have. Let's call it like 5 to 10 users. I am not even sure. And we're still working through how to configure it the right way. And, and one of these things where I actually am not that helpful, because I just have my own, there's like the book launch, and, my wife's been in Florida for a month with a new baby we adopted. So I'm like alone. I'm the only parent home with 10 kids, and we launched Predictable University. And so helping my team with configuring Salesforce.com is pretty damn low on my personal list. It's important, but we'll get there. And also that, they're figuring it out. So, but I think it's people underestimate how long it takes. And then even once you get it set up, you're continue to evolve it. So it's never something that stays, just like set it and forget it.
Right.
And that's true of a lot of tools.
It is. Yeah. I think there's this perception that you can bolt on a bunch of tools and automate everything up to wazoo, and it's going to be this magical universe where your sales issues will be all solved, and you'll have magical pipeline.
No, and then part of the problem in purveyors of this there's a lot of like these early stage companies that have automated, let's call it like outbound prospecting. And, if you're a small company, you can scrape the web for leads, and you can email people, and you don't have to deal with things there's not a lot of conflict, because you don't have a customer base. Like when you're small, you can do a lot of stuff that's automated because there's no complexity yet. But as soon as you have customers, and you start emailing your customers cold emails, and you look like an idiot. Or you have more than a few salespeople, and you have to have territories. And that's the thing, like sales-based territories, which at some point you need to have, whether they're geographic or industry. That doesn't work with scraping, where you can't scrape a list from the web and then divide it up by territory very easily. So anyway, the stuff that's really works and scalable and automated when you're really small, like breaks quickly as you start to grow. Yeah. So again, but a lot of the stories where like I'm one person, I automate all this. I'm like, yeah, but that only works for when you're one person. As soon as you have two people or four, that doesn't work once you start to grow. So as part of, I go back to with Carb.io, complexity is probably the main issue that as you scale, you have to deal with, and organizing your data and these sort of obscure issues that it's hard to explain unless you've really worked in, it's called outbound for a while. But like I can't always explain it to my team. Like I know that this is the right direction with simplifying and sort of bigger teams and scaling, and I can't always explain it with how data is really the whole point. But like, trust me, and we'll get there. At some point, we'll be able to explain it clearly, but we can't quite yet. That's why we haven't nailed our niche yet. Sure, everyone who hires us is still there's the predictable revenue brand. We're still dependent on the brand to grow, and once we break that dependence and the product can stand on its own, that's when we can say we've nailed our niche.
Sure. So beyond nailing a niche, right, and then building that predictability of the pipeline. Now, I thought what was kind of interesting is starting out the third chapter about making sales scalable. There's these 12 things that I guess Jason yourself saw that were constant failings of sales teams. I mean, you want to maybe just run through some of those?
I would, but I don't remember what they are. But I could guess, but that's the answer. So I do know that in that part, so again, the painful truth, so this is part number 3. The painful truth is speeding up growth causes more problems than it solves.
Right.
Until you make sales scalable. In other words, growing faster doesn't make things easier. It actually makes things harder for a while because you have more unhappy customers. You've got could be unhappy people, right? Because if you're hiring tons of salespeople, it's just like you're hiring people. Like when things are moving that fast, things break. But right. That's okay. That's part of that is being aware that it's okay to grow fast. Things will break.
You have to break stuff.
Yeah. And I'll give you an example where there's this company in Dinero, and they're a fast growing company.
They're the accounting software, right?
Yeah, they do accounting software. Now, as an author, I can appreciate that they're growing really fast and they're doing the right things. Whatever they're doing is working. I'm not really sure, why. And you have a great CEO or entrepreneur. But I've been a customer for a year or two, and I can tell you, as a customer, I may not be their right customer, but it is a horrible experience to be a customer. For me, being a customer of theirs when they're in hypergrowth.
Yeah.
The service has been horrendous. The only reason I have switched off is because it's not top of my list. I'm like, as soon as I can get off this thing, like I hate Dinero as a customer. I truly despise Dinero as a customer. The people are great; they're doing their best. But again, I'm just like I'm as soon as I can get off this thing, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So
I had a similar experience.
Well, just the point is, yeah.
No, I was just saying I had a similar experience with Zenefits, right? Because you have these companies that are hyper growth, and everything is breaking left and right, and it's like, okay, well, hey, I'm a customer, can I get some service? Like, I can't get people on insurance; they can't sign up. That would be an issue.
Yeah, and you know what? As much as customer success is usually like the number one thing, sometimes there's periods when you're growing so fast, you do your best, and there's people who are not going to be happy, and they're going to have a bad experience, and they'll leave. So this is why I say, as a customer, I can hate my experience with Dinero. But if I was the CEO, I might not do anything different because that's sort of all you can do, and you're just doing your best to grow fast, and you're trying to keep the wheels on the car, and oftentimes you can't. So that's part 3, make sales scalable. Part of those lessons is there's like 3 big topics in there. One is sales specialization. So it's same as predictable revenue, but there's more detail. There's a case study. What happens if you're too small? What happens if you're too big? And there's a whole topic, sort of mega topic on sales leadership. How do you know if you have the right VP of sales and or not? And then there's another sort of collection on truth is money, and how honesty is important to, like, if you're not being honest with yourself or your team and you're ignoring issues, they're just going to get even bigger later. And
what do you mean by that? Maybe just, something that was specific in the book.
Well, like there's a section on pipeline honesty.
No.
And it's easy for salespeople to have happy ears or to hope, right? And they inflate their pipeline, whether it's sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, because they want to look good and they don't, you don't feel like it's not working. But when you do that and your pipeline isn't a truly accurate reflection, to the best of your ability, you're just setting yourself up for a fall later. So short term, I feel good, but long term, and that's true as a VP of sales with your whole team, or CEO with your entire company. It's like if you're using hope as a strategy, if you want to be optimistic but not unrealistic with your, it can be a paradox. But the idea is sort of being honest with yourself, brutally honest with yourself, with your prospects, with your customers, with your team, in order to not let issues fester underneath because you don't want to deal with them. Trying to jump on them.
Yeah, it's like the happy years, depending on too many assumptions. The whole litany of stuff that happens when you're just moving so fast, and you just say, "Well, we'll get to it at some point."
Yep. Now, so I saw a couple questions come in under customer success. One, should it be run by sales? Sometimes it has been. I think it. It really, a lot of where functions are run depends on the team that's there. So, for example, if you have a bigger team and you can afford to have a dedicated executive who reports to the CEO, that's probably who would be a C-level customer success person. Sometimes you can't find that person, and sometimes just the way your model works, you want to have it under sales. So we had that in Salesforce. We did both at Salesforce at different times. But I do think it's a C-level function on par with sales and marketing. And then another question was, Ryan. Hey, Ryan. Ryan's an old friend of mine. Here's customer success is like a new big growth area for business, which I agree with. I think it's an area that people are going in some circles like Silicon Valley. People have recognized it, but it's still not mainstream, and it's going to be a big mainstream area of growth, like prospectors and SDRs, like sales specialization. Those are two sort of big areas of growth that will go mainstream over the next 5 to 20 years, and that's why it's a whole section in the new book. So, customer success, actually in the book, it's not in the sales part; it's in the lead generation part in part 2. So, part 1, nail a niche; part 2, basically lead generation, and that's the sort of the best way to systematize word of mouth lead generation is like a customer success program. So you want to jump around, but that's part 2. There's this whole section on it with like a case study on how you tie it to financial results, how you structure it if you have small, medium, large. It is super important. I think companies usually don't invest in customer success fast enough when they're small enough, or they don't invest big enough as they grow. It's usually they need to divert some of their sales investment to customer success.
Right. What I've seen is it tends to lag. So you hire all the sales reps, and then you have to actually service the customers that they bring in.
Yeah. Rather than pre-front, customer success early, so the entire team, including salespeople in the company, know exactly what does it take to make them successful, and how do you spot the ones who are a good fit and avoid the ones who are not. And it takes Jason's SaaStr conference. One of the things that came up that is not in the book, but I think it's important to know, it's going back to sales specialization. So this is part 3 of the new book, the Make Sales Scalable part, is you want to think about specializing your roles early. And this could be in sales, it could be in customer success. It doesn't really matter, any function in their company, really. And the thing is, it can take 6 months from when you start to do it to when you feel like you've got the kinks worked out. So this is why, even if you have sales working, the earlier you can start with a customer success function or a new specialized sales role, because it takes you longer than you think it should to get the kinks worked out.
Folks, if you have any questions, please send them over. But in the meantime, I want to get back to the question of hiring. That's a big question that folks have, especially when they're early on. So do I hire an SDR? Do I hire an AE? Do I hire two at a time? Do I hire a VP of sales? I know you talked a lot about that in one of the chapters of the book. So just kind of like some highlights you'd like to share.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, if there's people here that are in smaller companies, I think it's, so usually what happens if let's say if you're an entrepreneur and you don't have a sales team yet, usually what you want to do is hire a junior person first. So you're the salesperson, you're the CEO, you're still helping close deals. You got to have that experience so you know what you're doing in order to be able to hire people and train them effectively. So rather than hiring a closer so they can close for you, hire a junior person who can handle like the appointment setting and whether it's prospecting or lead response. So you can focus on closing. And then it'll be easier, less risky to hire a closer or to promote that person into a closer role. So I think that's one it's like a very common case where people make mistakes because entrepreneurs tend to hire a closer first and then they tend not to succeed. And you got to do that 2 or 3 times. And then in the hiring front, we actually have a guest section from Mark Robert of HubSpot. I think one of the point here is that what he looks for, and I agree, with the number one trait of salespeople is coachability, which really means they're willing and able to learn and listen and adapt as things change. So you can call it adaptability, but coachability, it's not sales experience necessarily. It's not skills. If you can learn all that, it might take you longer. But coachability.
We had a question about.
And then actually.
Had a question from Ryan.
Yeah, for SDR. So, SDR hires. I personally like, probably the number one thing is people who take initiative. And they've shown that they've taken initiative in the past. In fact, if you go to predictablerevenue.com/recruiting, there's a hiring guide. So it's predictablerevenue.com/recruiting. But I like people to take initiative. When you have a team, when you're building any kind of team, you want a builder and you start figuring it out. And there's builders and growers, and builders tend to like to figure things out. And it's okay if it's not all mapped out. I gotta try this, gotta try that. And then once you get it working, they tend to get a bit more.
Hey, Aaron? Yeah, so while Aaron is getting back on, we have a few. Oh, there we go. We have a few meetups that are coming up for the enterprise sales meetup. So next one is actually Tuesday, March 15th in New York City. That's going to be really interesting. It's actually touches on hiring, but also hiring from the perspective of trying to find really great candidates who are female, minorities, just trying to broaden the pool of talent that's out there and to look a little bit beyond your own network to try and find really great sales talent. Then in Boston on March the 16th, Wednesday, we're going to have a session on whale hunting.
Oh, there we go.
And we're coming up to the end of our hour, so.
Yep. That's all right.
The
Yeah,
wonders of technology.
that's fine. So yeah, let's wrap. So let me do this because in 5 minutes, I think I would like to do is on this stuff, just touch on a couple things that other people have said they've really loved most about the new book. Now, this is From Impossible to Inevitable book. If you look at it on Amazon, there's a whole bunch of reviews, which there's only a couple that are biased. Like Jason put one on there, my co-author. He says, hope you love the book. But most of them are people that just put them up there. And there's some really amazing comments. Like someone said it's the best book they've ever read. Another person said they put down Dance of Dragons for it, Game of Thrones. He's like, and that's saying something. Another person, and a lot of these are CEOs. Another said it's the first business book they finished in years. And there's some other ones where like really great compliments. So I would encourage you to, and you can get a free sample from impossible.com. Ryan here again mentions, we nailed it. But there's a couple topics in there that people said have really resonated. I'll just do one because we're coming up on an end. And it's this idea of employee ownership. And a lot of owners or leaders feel like, well, why don't my employees work as hard as I do? Why don't they take the initiative? Why do they need their hands held so much? And in the book, and actually the free sample you can get it from impossible.com, there's a sample letter from executives to employees and another sample letter from employees to executives. It's like the two different viewpoints. And employees basically are saying, hey, I'm great. Why don't you listen to me? Why don't you recognize my potential? And if I had the right opportunity, I could crush it. And the executives are saying, hey, if you didn't have potential, if I didn't believe in you, I wouldn't have hired you. And if you're waiting around to be told what to do, to be told how to succeed, like how to succeed faster than the regular career track, then you're missing the whole point. Because in order to be a success beyond like the basic career track, you need to be able to take the initiative. You need to act like an owner. You need to own something to do more than your basic job description, rather than just sort of doing the basic and waiting like if you do great at your basic job, you're going to get nice promotions at some point. So if you want to leapfrog that, go faster, you need to do more than the basic job and come solve problems for executives. So in other words, if my people need me to tell them what to do, even how to succeed, they're creating more work for me. And the people who are going to get the extra promotions faster are the ones who create less work for me because they're solving my problems for me. They're finding the problems, they're coming up with ideas, and they're doing something about it without being told what to do all the time. So that's sort of like there's two viewpoints in how they can meet in the middle. How do you create more employee ownership, more emotional ownership for employees? Oops, that's it. And I think we're done. Is anyone still here?